to ask that question. Are we live? Oh.
We are a go. Okay.
Oh, this is so peaceful, everybody. I'm sitting by the fire pit right now. Oh, that's right, I forgot. They have a fire ban in the Turtle Lake, so we can't even sit by the fire pit. But didn't you love that music? The birds? Did you enjoy the birds, everybody? I'm doing a little bit of paddle boarding right now because I'm trying to just relax. So this is awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. 7th edition. Where's the time going, Colton? Wow. So this is, we've been having quite a journey on all different levels, and we are going to have some interesting conversation with Mr. Stephen Nicholson. So I'm going to wait to him. He's patiently sitting off to the side. I'm going to just, as we always do, give you a little bit of updates on some things, some shout outs, and then I will certainly formally introduce Stephen Nicholson from the W Group. So this will be quite, I hope, engaging conversation today. Couple things. Shout out, National Nurses Week. Thank you very much to the nurses for all the care and the patience they've had in working with those out there in the COVID world. So we want to say thank you, and our hearts go out to you. I want to say a shout out to Westcap. Westcap did a gracious and a generous donation of $250,000. They gave it to the senior homes and residences. So what they could do is stay connected with their families and their children and their grandchildren. So I know it's in conjunction and conversation with the RUH, as well the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital. So Jim Pattison Children's Hospital. So I want to say that was fantastic. Thank you, Grant Cook, for all that you do for the community. And in a world that we're in right now, the communication, that connection is incredibly important. We are here on Facebook Live. You do know that we have these taped, and they will be on our Facebook for viewing later. So I would encourage you to, if you haven't had a chance to capture it all, or maybe had to exit a bit early, to go back in and take a boo, and also send them out to your friends and your colleagues and your business partners and all those types of things. So we'd like to have them listen in as well, because again, I think today will be quite informative. We have got a website also. So for those that aren't on Facebook, do let those know that we do have these all taped, and they're on our website as well. So you can go back and take a look at them there. So what else do we have to share? We have, I should introduce Colton. Colton is that side. So Colton Wiegers, can I formally announce? Oh, okay. We have some surprises coming up later, so you just wait and listen. So noteworthy updates on the insurance side. There hasn't been a lot of movement on some of the things that the insurance companies are doing with respect to things like deferring premium, credits for premiums, extension of benefits, and things like that. What they did a few weeks back is pretty much where it's at. We've had one or two companies trickle in and done another extension of their benefits. So do ask questions to us if you're looking at extending benefits. I know that we're in another wave. What we're looking at there is that whole conversation that was about layoffs, and we went forward on a lot of layoffs. Now we're looking at more to the permanent layoffs, reduced hours, work share programs, that type of stuff. So do stay very informed on the benefits, how that relates to those employees, what you can and can't extend, and to who you can extend it to. So again, any questions, please let us know. It's really important to have these things in place at the onset. I did mention to you that we are working with a virtual onboarding kit, and we will be rolling that out. It will be a coordination between two very important pieces, the HR piece as you go into that virtual onboarding space, and then as we look at the benefits, what are those things that we need to be thinking about on a virtual level on the benefit side. And speaking of virtual, I had a really interesting article that I read, and it was from a very well-known company out there called Green Shield Canada. And they did do a survey with their base, of members and clients, and they wanted to know where the interest level was on virtual care. So the survey of 500 plan members, 74% indicated that they're much more willing to use virtual services to consult with a physician. Other findings were that 67% are starting to be very comfortable doing prescription refills at a pharmacy, online pharmacy. 43%, which I thought was quite interesting and is very good to know, is that 43% are really looking at virtual applications with respect to mental well-being. So do not be scared of it. Do not think it doesn't work. I know myself, I went for a walk last night and I had my podcast going. I usually have really loud music, but this time I was listening to some really good conversation around just that mental well-being space, managing anxiety, all those types of things, and some really, really simplistic but very yet effective tips that they gave. So again, I would encourage you to everybody has a phone. We have it on all the time. Just put it on the right station is what we should do. And they also did say, which was interesting, and to Haley, one of our partners, they were talking about online virtual application with respect to physiotherapy. So these things are starting to move forward, and as much as we find them really weird and awkward, they're making their way to have very effective level services on a virtual level. So I think that's really good news to know that we're all starting to get our heads into the game on that. I also want to do a shout out to, I'm excited because now we're moving into phase 2 and 3 of businesses, and some of those now moving into phase 3 and 2 will be our wellness partners. So with our wellness partners, we have some discounts that come available to our clients, and they could take advantage of it. So I know you can't probably read that, but that's our wellness partners. So shout out to Just For You Day Spa. They're going to be opening up and offering massage next week, and then the next phase they'll be opening up on another level of services. We've got and it's summertime, and we're probably not doing a lot of traveling, obviously. So there's things like Bruce's Cycle. I know that they fix bikes. You can put them outside. They take them, they fix them, they bring them back. So please think of them. Trax Footwear, great walking gear. Again, we've got some discounts. Ellen's Health Body. She's got a lot of herbs and vitamins and things like that. So our list goes on and on. It's Popeyes, our vitamins and nutritional store there. And with Think and Colton, quickly help me out. What was the name? Supplement World. Yeah. So again, a lot of great partners that we're working with, and thank you guys for doing all the things that you need to be doing to be out there providing that level of service in these difficult times. And with that, I think we're going to maybe move into a formal introduction of Stephen. So is Stephen online? Hi, Stephen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Just fine, thanks.
Good. So what you doing for the long weekend?
Well, not a lot of traveling.
Are you going to come paddleboarding? Just do that. Go to the
I
river.
thought we're allowed to be together, Deb, so.
Do that. Well, you know what? We can have side by sides. They do that, and it's probably safer. You won't drown. So, well, I know that a lot of people are looking forward to the weather because we're going to have a fantastic weekend. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the northern lights are probably have fire bans in place. So as much as there's been wet, we just barely got through the snow getting going and melting. Apparently, a lot of the areas are very, very dry. Go figure.
But it sounds like the weather's going to be really nice, as you said, so people can get out, go walking and do that kind of stuff. That'd be great. So,
looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
You're just mentioning something that I was going to mention that I have a new pair of shoes from Trax that I bought last week. So,
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, I love their story. Oh, you can get lost in it, I'm going to tell you. And I know there's a lot of gear for people that do a little more heavy hiking and even just like working. A lot of their boots are very well protected, but yet very comfortable. So, and that's important because we need to save our ankles and our knees and our backs as we get older. But you and I aren't very old, are we, Stephen?
hardly at all, no.
No. I looked at so formal introduction. Stephen and I mean, we've met quite a few years back, I think, just through some of the work that you've been doing on an ongoing basis with Wiegers Financial and Benefits. So thank you very much for doing that, because I know you guys have done lunch and learn sessions and provided some certainly good consulting to a lot of our clients. So that's good. And one of the things that we really like is that, I mean, they're very diversified with what they do. I know with Stephen, he works in the area of business law, corporate and commercial, which obviously in what's going on right now, I think you're probably, and we'll, I'm sure, get a few questions, getting a lot of inquiries and questions regarding this whole COVID matter. Certainly working on a commercial and real estate level. And I won't date you, but you've been many years in business, kind of like me. Our numbers are the same, Stephen. Our numbers are the same. So it's yeah. When we hit 50 years, we'll be saying we're getting old, right?
Yeah.
So very well educated, obviously, Bachelor in Law, Bachelor of Arts and History. What I found really interesting, man, you do a lot of stuff in the community. Thank you for that. Like, wow. So I found it really good, and I like the way that you kind of go from here to here, but you are vice chair of the Prairie Sky, so the chamber out in Warman. So I think that's a very, very busy role right there. You love your music. That is cool, because I love music too. I always wanted to be a singer in my second life. So when I saw that you were the Fireside Singers, wow. So how many years doing that?
Well, I've been the photographer for them for many years, but I just joined the choir just last year, actually. My wife's the piano player for them, so I've been around the Fireside Singers for many years. So
nice. I bet that's great therapy right now.
Yeah, well, except that they can't get together right now for obvious reasons. But
well, you can do like everybody else does from a bunch of videos. Have you ever seen those? They made some really cool songs. The Lean On Me song was the latest that I really liked. So that was good. So thank you for that. And then very involved on the sports level. So with the Aurora soccer team. So that's our world when our daughters in Colton, I guess, played in the Aurora League. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today. I know that the W Law Group, again, they're very proactive on the business level. And I know that Adam would have liked to join us, but he's doing what a lot of people are doing in terms of just adapting to what's happening on the COVID level. So he's at home working with his wife, apparently, who is as well a lawyer, and 3 little ones. So those are the ones that get the medal in my world, when they can work at home with little ones and still stay sane. So I wanted to jump into it, and I promised Stephen I wouldn't get him into any deep, dark paths, because I know there's lots of questions, and I'm one of those people that probably just keeps on asking questions. So I know that the one thing that I want to really, really stress is, because the W Law Group has been a very special partner of us and helped our clients a lot with, conversations on a legal level. They are preferred partners. So what we are going to do today, because we have been offered up to our clients the consulting level. So when our clients have an inquiry on a legal level, then we just, have them call up Stephen or one of the other colleagues at the W Law Group, and they will provide a complimentary consult levels or consult service. So thank you for that, because I think that's kind of what gets the ball rolling for a lot of people to know what is it I need to be thinking about, and where do I need to go with it. To you viewers out there, Stephen has graciously offered to say that if you do have questions that we can't dive into today, then you're more than welcome to pick up the phone. And I'm assuming, Stephen, like I said, do you want me to give out your phone number or your email address, or how do you want to work it?
Either or. The phone number is good, or by email, either one. So thanks. Okay. If you contact us, we'll be happy to provide a one-on-one consultation kind of thing, and it's just easier to do it that way than and at no cost for an initial sort of like 15 minutes or so kind of thing. It's really hard to get into specific legal problems, especially on a forum like this, to deal with one person's particular problem. A, because we can't really get into all the details in a lot of cases, and secondly, they may have some confidential information they don't want to disclose and stuff like that. We can't really provide advice unless we know all the information. So if they want to contact us, we'll be happy to provide advice about the things we're going to talk about in general terms, like employee issues or landlord and tenant disputes or problems, or in the worst case scenario, if they have insolvency or restructuring questions, that kind of thing. So any of those kind of things we'll be happy to provide. We know that many of the people that are watching are your preferred clients. We're happy to help out that way. And as well, part of it is just that one of the things I'm going to mention today is I really think it's important for the business community to work together to get through this. And that's, if we can help in some small way by providing some complimentary advice that maybe help somebody through a problem, we're happy to do that. We want to see businesses reopen when we get through all of this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it. I mean, this is very, very murky water right now. You feel like you're kind of starting to float and you're in a comfortable spot, and then bang, things change. And so it's really tough for business to stay on top of that. And so to have your expertise there at the table, I think that'll take a lot of pressure off clients that are asking all those questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we got a few questions. Again, this is an interactive presentation. We welcome all the questions. I got Colton over here that will read them back to me. If after there is other questions, you're very more than welcome to contact Stephen. So his phone number, if you have a pen handy, is... do you want to just email or put on the screen?
This is Colton here. I'll put it in the comments and the description of the video, either during or after.
Perfect.
Or at the end. So we'll make sure it's in there.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to hand that to you, Colt. Perfect. All right, let's roll. So, not that I want to be a lawyer, because I always say the pat with my HR gal, I said, I love what you do because there's no way I could do it and what you guys do. But then some people say there's no way they can do what we do. So that's why we're all great at what we do. Right. So I get curious. I start to kind of look around and I get, asking some questions. And one of the things that came up now that we're into these opening phases, there was that kind of that surreal, uncertain moment where nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden this phase one came in and everybody's kind of looking and watching to see what's going on. Now, phase two, moving into that next level of space, probably more vulnerability, I think, mentally, is what it's kind of gotten to now from what I'm hearing. You guys talk about standard of care. And I know that's one thing that keeps coming back to me, when we get talking stories and they're going like this, there's confusion. And I know you and I talked, Stephen, and you'd mentioned that you can't look at these as one answer. Because depending on the industry you're in, depending on the demographics or the geological location, I mean, there's going to be different rules that are going to apply, but there's going to be a general level, so a general standard of care. And I found it interesting when you Google or you ask the question what standard of care is, and it really just says how a person conducts him or herself in order to avoid creating a foreseeable risk. Because that's what this is going to be about. Is that what is that going to look like? What can I be doing as a business? What can I be doing, as an individual to manage that risk that might be out there that people are very concerned about? So there is guidelines, right, Stephen? There's guidelines that you have to adhere to. So to go there, Google and blog the Saskatchewan Workplace Health and Safety Guidelines for Employers. As the businesses reopen. It's really important that you spend some time and get very familiar with that. Don't just talk to your colleague that might be in the same business as you and think that you can follow all the same rules. And so for you, Stephen, like what are some of the inquiries you are getting on this? Like are people just still confused about what it is they can and can't do or should do by virtue of what the government's calling for?
Well, I think you touched on it a bit, Deb. But first and foremost, people have to look at the guidelines on the Reopen Saskatchewan plan, and that's on the Government of Saskatchewan website. And they have guidelines there that are sort of minimums or things that you're required to do. There are general guidelines for sort of industries generally, but there's also, as we get into phase two here, some specific guidelines for specific industries. So, for example, they've got guidelines for clothing and retail stores, greenhouses, personal care services like hairdressers and that kind of thing. So there's specific guidelines for specific industries that as a minimum, as a business owner, people have to look at those and make sure they're complying with those rules and regulations about how they can conduct things and how the employees are supposed to act and how the customers are allowed to enter the business and deal with the business kind of thing. Beyond that, it's the standard of care. That's sort of the minimum you have to do because that's what the regulations are, kind of thing. Beyond that, I guess the common sense thing to do would just be do the best you can. If you can, that might be the minimum standard, but you want to do as most you can to make sure that your business is safe for your customers, for your clients, and for your employees and for yourself as the business owner. So there's other steps you can take to make sure those things are done. A comment I heard on a recent conference call I was on was someone was asked about what's the best advice for the people that are trying to reopen next week. And the comment that was made that I really think is really appropriate is think safety first and profit second. And as business owners, sometimes we want to think about the profits and getting people in and selling products and stuff like that, but we got to make sure we do it in a responsible way, whether you're selling a product or a service kind of thing. Be careful and just take it slow. And I guess the other thing I was going to mention too is that for the ones that are reopening next week in phase two, they're the guinea pigs or what's going to be the setup for phase three, and there's no date announced for that yet. But if the people that are open do it responsibly and things stay fairly safe as they have been in Saskatchewan because of what we have been doing, then your restaurant owner neighbor will get to open his restaurant sooner. So
True that. And we all want to get out sometime, right? So, and it's interesting because I know that I've gained a whole new respect for the businesses that are being challenged with this. I mean, we're very fortunate that we're in essential services. We've had to do as everybody else done, gone remote. I mean, there's quite the challenge in just getting that piece set up. And I know Colton introduced workplace chat, and it's been really, really effective. But for the people that had been working with the public, different story, right? I mean, we can do a lot of our business by phone, right, and video, and so those ones that require you to be in their store to take advantage of their services is a little bit more difficult. And I know, talking to a dentist yesterday, I just didn't even quite get this whole thing when they talked about these rules and parameters that they have to work in, and that's where 25%, he says about 25% is what he thinks about, is they're not going to be opening for a little while, even though they had the go to open. And the reason being is that it's the challenges of getting to that space of being able to open. They have to completely, and it's like walking into a bubble, I guess. If you go into a dentist chair, they have to seal it from the floor to the top completely, because of when they're doing work on your mouth, of course, the spray from the water sprayer and things like that. So I went, wow, I didn't even think of that, right? And I know even some are saying there's a bit of a challenge still getting the equipment, like the masks and the gowns. So those are where, like I say to the community, be supportive, be patient. They're not all just going to open on the same day, and they do have to really dig deep to do a lot of different things that we would never ever think about having to do to get that business open and running, right? So privacy, I wanted to throw this one at you. We won't get into it, but I read a really interesting, watched a video and read an interesting article, and I'm sure other people have heard and seen this, but they talk about tracking to better focus on managing the COVID virus and the COVID spread, and maybe the areas that might not be so safe and things like that. So they have actually done this in Korea and UK and I think Australia. And anyways, they were talking about it with the Vancouver company, and I sent you that article because, of course, there's a company in Vancouver that really would like to do this in Canada. What are your thoughts? I mean, privacy is a pretty dangerous thing, but COVID's kind of dangerous too. So, where's that balance go?
Well, I know when you sent me the article, I looked at it. I was familiar with the tracking app, I'll call it. I know that it has been downloaded a lot in Australia. I read an article about that. I don't see that being something that's going to happen in Saskatchewan. First of all, I think that, again, we've been fortunate that the steps we've taken have kept the numbers down in Saskatchewan. So I don't think that most people are going to be willing to submit to an app that tracks us like Big Brother. And even if your employees did download that app and were willing to have it, I don't know that they're going to share all that information with their employer. So I don't see that being, unless things get much worse than what they are currently. Yeah, I don't see that being the sort of something that's going to be very likely to build up in Saskatchewan. The other thing that I had mentioned to you about that was that for it to be effective, that tracking app apparently has to be downloaded. I understand at least 60% of the population has to be using it. So basically, it only tracks the people that are on the app. So if most people are not on it, it doesn't work to know who you're visiting with, or where you've been, or whether you've been exposed to someone who's tested positive or not.
Could employers though enforce it if they wanted to?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that the privacy issues would be pretty hard to force employees to download that app and be tracked.
Yeah.
I think differently. One thing that employers can do is certainly talk to their employees about being responsible, and knowing that if you do have employees that are coming into your physical business location and so on, you can certainly ask questions and make sure hopefully that they're being socially responsible. I have had employers that have talked to us about issues of employees that they know are not being careful on their weekends and so on, and that they're going to places where there's crowds, or they're visiting with lots of family and friends and stuff like that. And certainly in those kind of situations, you can certainly encourage the employees to be responsible and be careful, and remind them that they're putting your workplace at risk.
But we cannot. Oh, sorry, go
ahead.
I say we can ask questions, or can we ask questions as an employer?
Well, I think we can.
Maybe heard that someone might have been amongst a group of people. Do we reserve the right as an employer to say, "Hey, what were you up to this weekend?"
Well, I think we can certainly, we can't force them to answer, but we can certainly ask the question. Yeah. And again, part of it is just everybody has to work together here. That includes employers and employees. And if you're going to have, we've got some employees in our office, but we've got a lot of employees that are working remotely. And for the people that have been in our office, and I'm one of them that has been in the office basically from day one, we only have about less than a third of our usual complement of lawyers and staff in the office, and everybody else is either working remotely, or we have a handful of people that are unfortunately on leave right now because of this situation. But with the people that are in the office, we've been really careful and really responsible with each other as far as trying to make sure that we know that we're working with each other people. We've got to be careful with what we do outside of the office. And we expect them to do the same thing. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. Again, working cooperatively with our employees and with our management and stuff like that. And it's been working really well so far. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I know I've heard from one of our clients, and he's doing absolutely everything, and I think going above and beyond. I was talking to him on Friday night, and he's a salon. If Laddie's out there, you know what? I'm so excited that you guys are moving forward and opening. I can't wait. But he said he was talking about hanging plexiglass. Like, again, I didn't understand. Everybody says, oh, plexiglass at the reception desk. Okay, we get that. But he was hanging plexiglass in between all his salon chairs, from ceiling to bottom. So I said, well, you might as well have a little fun with it. You get some Jiffy markers, the neon ones, and people can doodle so it doesn't look so sterile when you walk into the salon. But he also said he was going to do, and I don't know if the right word was it, the thermal, because I read and they say thermal cameras. But I mean, I'm thinking, like just to take your temperature, right? But he's saying that's what they're going to do as people come in. I know employers are asking that and putting in place for their employees is that they're taking temperatures before these employees come to work. And also when they are, they're taking clients that are coming in. So we're good with that, right?
Well, I think I have heard of other businesses that are doing that. It's a thermal thermometer, or it's a non-touch thermometer, I'm assuming he's talking about. And certainly, you could certainly request the client submit to that and refuse to have them come into the salon if they choose not to be tested, kind of thing. So, yeah. But I think that's certainly an example of someone, going above and beyond to make sure that the clients are safe and the employees are safe and so on. And that sounds very responsible. So.
Absolutely. And I want to do a shout out. I think there's a few in the audience, and I always encourage, and I know Denise is out there. Hi, Denise. Tamara, I think maybe Shauna is listening in, but you guys, you always are good for questions, so I'm just waiting. Okay, here's probably one of the burning subjects. Now that the businesses are opening, what do we do if someone doesn't want to come back to work? Because I'm hearing that more than often. And I mean, I understand that, they probably can't take everybody back anyway, because it's a very slow phase for them as a business by virtue of the fact that they can't take all the clients they'd like to take. But what happens if someone's refusing to come back? What would you help them out with and guide them there?
Well, from the legal perspective, it's the Saskatchewan Employment Act that gives workers the right to refuse dangerous work where the worker has reasonable grounds to believe that the work is unusually dangerous to the worker's health and safety. So that's sort of the legal statement for it, kind of thing. So the big issue is it unsafe or not? And the problem with that is every situation is going to be different, and every fact situation is going to be different and has to be assessed sort of on a one-on-one basis, kind of thing. In the extreme case, I mean, first of all, I guess if the employee was saying that they feel it's not safe, as an employer, what I would suggest you do is you talk to them and see if there's anything you can do above and beyond what you've already done that might make them feel comfortable enough to feel that it's appropriate to come back to work. If at the end of the day you can't agree on the terms, I don't know how available they are right now, but you can ask the occupational safety officers to come out and actually look at your workplace and assess whether they believe it's safe or not. And if they believe it's safe, then you have grounds to sort of force the employee to come back, kind of thing. And beyond that, if you feel the employee is just being completely unreasonable, kind of thing, and won't return to work, with legal advice, you should probably consult with someone and make sure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's, so to speak. Difficult decisions might have to be made about that employee, about whether that means that you're going to let them go or not. But again, that should only be done with one-on-one advice and consulting with your solicitor first, kind of thing, and making sure that you've taken all the steps you need to, and secondly, covered yourself off as much as you can in case the employee takes the position that you wrongfully terminated them and they want to sue for pay in lieu of notice kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Well, and I understand, that it's a two-way conversation, and there's lots of different variances. I know you've mentioned that, in terms of just how you would have to view this and how seriously you'd have to view it. I mean, it's something that you can't overlook. And I always use that word, the knee jerk. You cannot do this and just think it goes away, because I don't think that's the best advice that you would be giving them. I think the best advice is just make sure that you have done the pre-work. Put those, like you said, those P's and Q's in orders, because sometimes it's just going to be perception. What you've done is everything above and beyond, but still to the employee, it might be they don't believe that they're feeling safe enough yet, right? So there's going to be that bantering that would go on that level. But I think the worry is kind of get that next level is that, they need to bring other people to work potentially. So now how do they deal with and juggle this part, right?
Yeah, no, it's got to be careful. And again, if there's ways to accommodate some employees, or if you've got some employees that are more nervous about it than others, and that's the other thing, every person out there that I've talked to has different levels of comfort. There's some people who think the COVID is not a big issue, and they're not scared, they're not concerned, they're quite happy to come back to work right away. And others are scared to death, and may have good reason to be scared. They may have, elderly people in their family that they live with, or someone who has a compromised immune system. So every situation is different, and that's why I said it needs to really be assessed. You need to talk to someone and give all the facts and know what the situation is and know what steps you've taken to make your workplace safe, and also what, to some extent, what the particular employee's situation is as well. So, yeah,
absolutely. I think we have a question.
We do. So this is from Kirsten. I'm going to throw it on the screen here. What about an employee who doesn't have childcare and isn't coming back? Are they required to return?
I'm not sure what the "isn't coming back" part means, but
maybe refuses to come back, Kirsten?
Okay. Or maybe can't come back because they have.
So yeah, I don't know if there's any. Again, none of these questions have black and white answers, unfortunately, sort of thing. So, I mean, you have to try to find childcare. I mean, the fact that you don't have childcare isn't in and of itself a reason to say that you can't come back to work. As an employer, we're doing our best to accommodate our individual employees. That some of them are working remotely because with schools being out, it's easier for them to be at home and work that way, kind of thing. So I think as an employer, all we can do is just do the best you can to accommodate them.
I think too, and again, on both sides, maybe it's like it's what's that best effort that's been given, right? Has the best effort given? I mean, by choice, we would like to go back to what it was before, maybe that favorite daycare center, but the reality is it's not going to happen. So what's the next best choice, although it's not your best, right? And I think has to be a willingness maybe to compromise on both sides, because we all have to get over it. It wasn't what it was yesterday. It's very different. We have to now adapt with what's going on today.
Yeah, and as I say, and the employee has to adapt too. They can't, employees can't expect that they're going to be able to work from home permanently just because they have been able to do so on a temporary basis during the crisis, kind of thing. So at some point in time in a lot of businesses, and in our particular business, could we have some people working from home, working remotely sometimes? Probably could. Could we have everybody working from home? No, we need people in the business. And if you're operating a retail, operating a retail store, you need your customer service people in the store. You can't do it all remotely, kind of thing. So
exactly. There was an ending to the question. Kirsten's got another one.
Yeah. So just the follow up with that, and you may have in a sense answered this, was yes, she hasn't given us a date when she can return. So if the individual does not know when they will return or has not given a date when they can come back.
That's that limbo. Like, what do you do with that limbo?
Yeah.
It's a dance, but how would you work that? Like,
again, it's hard. You just got to try to work together as best you can to figure it out. At some point in time, at some point in time, if depending again what the situation is, I don't know what the type of business is or what the employee does or that sort of thing, or how crucial it is to have that person back right away. But depending on what it is, at some point in time, that the decision might have to be put to the employee that you either have to come back or we have to move on and find somebody else. But again, that's general advice. They should be talking, the employer should talk to someone one-on-one before they make a decision to let someone go because they won't return by a certain date or something like that. So.
But that would be a reasonable place to start, is to say, look, we can't be, as a business, we need to replace that position. So, again, kind of the team approach would be, is it reasonable to say that, if you can't have an answer within 2 weeks or a week, we need to be able to go forward.
Exactly.
And we need to keep business going, right?
Yeah, exactly. As business owners, we need to operate, and you need to be able to operate your business, and you need the employees to assist with that and to cooperate with you as well. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you for joining in. Person's always a good one for questions too. So, so that one I think is gonna it'll kind of, again, it's very murky. I find that everybody's kind of on different places, and because the phase of the business is opening maybe allows for a little bit of that laxing of this. People that aren't comfortable yet to come to work. To your point, Stephen, I don't expect that anytime soon any business is going to be opening up and all 50 people that were laid off are coming back to work tomorrow. You think of hotels. I know with Shauna, we've had some really good conversation. These larger hotels in the city, like it's a very different world for them, and nothing's going to be the same for a very, very long time. So they might be able to move and navigate around this. People not comfortable yet because they don't need a lot of people. But eventually it'll get to the place where they will need them. So
exactly.
So let's move on, because I think we're kind of doing okay for time, but I want to make sure we get these last 2 points in. So you work a lot with, businesses as it gets into rental and landlord rights. And again, that's another thing I hear coming up. People that have stores that are in malls, for example, or anywhere where they have to pay, lease or rent. And so there's this push and pull because there's a program that's out there that allows for a little bit of reprieve, but the buy-in has to be there and the discussion has to happen. And sometimes it's people not happening. So what are you seeing? Are you getting calls on that in terms of just, there is some resistance to this, or is it going well?
It's been a little bit all over the map. There's been some situations where the landlord and tenants have worked together very well and come to an arrangement and figured something out. In other cases where they're not cooperating at all. And I guess it's the same as I said before, I would encourage people to work together. This is a difficult situation. Obviously, in a situation where a tenant has been shut down, and hasn't been able to operate for 2 or 3 months. They have no revenue coming in, or virtually no revenue coming in. And if the landlord doesn't work with them, the risk is that the tenant goes out of business. And so I really feel that there's a strong incentive for the landlords and tenants to work together, and for the landlord to give a little bit. But on the flip side of that, the tenant also has to remember that the landlord has bills too. We act for landlord clients as well, and obviously, they may have bills to pay as well, kind of thing. So it's not totally a one-way street that the tenant can sort of say, well, I won't pay anything, and just hope that the landlord is going to be okay with that. But if both parties work together and try to work out something, and they can work out a rent forgiveness agreement where the landlord maybe forgives part of the rent for the period of time when they're closed. Or I have seen a few landlords that are quite quick to agree to a rent deferral agreement. And in a deferral, it would just mean that if you don't pay rent for, say, 3 months, the amount of that rent just gets added on to the rest of your lease and amortized out over the term of the rest of your lease. So the landlord still ends up collecting all of the rent, assuming the tenant stays in business till the end of the term. But at least the tenant isn't cash strapped right now trying to pay rent when they don't have any revenue coming in. The federal program I'll touch on just quickly is basically the very basic terms of it is it allows, if the landlord, they both have to agree on it, they both have to enter into a rent forgiveness agreement. And with that, as long as the landlord forgives at least 75% of the rent that the tenant otherwise would have paid, the governments are kicking in a forgivable loan that's basically 50%. So essentially what happens is that the governments end up paying 50%, landlord pays 25%, and the tenant pays 25%, and the landlord receives essentially 75% of what they would have received otherwise.
Yeah.
There's a couple of criteria there that they have to meet. The tenant has to be down in revenue at least 70% over their pre-COVID revenue. And there's one little wrinkle there that's affecting a few situations where the program that's been announced so far requires that the landlord must have a commercial mortgage on the property. But they also, when they made the announcement, they have said that there will be a program coming out to address the situation where the landlord doesn't have a mortgage on the property yet. So that one isn't in place yet, but supposedly there's something coming down the pipe at some point in time. So.
See, that's good news. And it was to what I said at the beginning. It says we seem to think we know what's going on, and then bang, they change it again. So there is a question. Tamara's got a question. Thank you, Tamara.
I can read it out here.
All right.
It's a bit big to put on the screen, so I won't show it all. She says, I had employees laid off, and the reason noted on the ROE was a shortage of work / end of contract or season. I'm not sure if everyone will return or not, but if they don't have work to come back to, what is my obligation as an employer?
Did you hear that?
I did, yeah. So when again, I want to emphasize that employment law is not my specialty. So take this advice with a bit of grain of salt. If you want to call in Tamara, we can certainly put you in touch with one of our employment laws and let them talk to you generally. But what happened with the initial layoffs was it said that you could lay people off. Normally, if you lay people off for a period of time like we have here, you would have to pay them severance. The Saskatchewan government changed the rules to apply to this emergency situation that said we could lay people off for up to 12 weeks without having to pay any termination pay. If you don't bring them back, the obligation to pay termination pay is likely going to come in. So depending on how long they've been with you and that sort of thing, there might be a right to a severance pay at that point in time. Beyond that, I would suggest you would call in and talk to one of our employment lawyers.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple more follow-up to that. I'll put this one on the screen for you, Stephen.
Actually, I've actually got it open, Colton. I can see it. So I see that it's the question is, does the 70% reduction in revenues have to be proven each month? It does for each month that you're applying for the lease assistance program. So if you were down 70% in April, but not down 70% in May because you've made some changes and your revenues went up again, then you could get the rent assistance program for April, but not for May. So it's basically each month, April, May, and June was a separate month that you could apply for it. I should mention too, if you paid your rent in April, and you enter into this rent agreement with your landlord and they agree to apply for this program kind of thing, you can either get the money refunded for April or they can just forgive your rent for July or August or whatever kind of thing down the road. Good to know.
Good to know. Yeah. So our Patty has a question. Thanks, Pat. What is it? There a possible extension?
I did hear something last week. I tried to find it online yesterday and couldn't find the details of it. I did hear last week that some of the federal programs are being extended and that details would be coming down the pipe later. So I think it's very likely that for employees that are still on these temporary layoffs beyond the 12 weeks, that it's very likely that the program will be extended.
Yeah. And that kind of, I think that's kind of a little bit what I'm hearing, because there was that people are hearing this and I haven't, had much time to pay attention to the news. I just kind of get the updates from clients, but there's a struggle. That's where we get into that refusal to work, because because the program is paying, in some cases, paying more than what they would make going back to work. And now they've extended this program. Can you imagine being in the employer's position, trying to do all those things and still have that difficulty of getting past that barrier, right? So
yeah, it's certainly a factor to be considered in whether the employee is being reasonable or whether the employee has a genuine fear of coming back to work, or whether they're just wanting to collect the $2,000 a month and not come back to work.
Yeah. So I would think that this might be the one that you're going to get a few calls on, Stephen. Okay, we have to have one last question. Then I'm going to wrap up because I want to get you guys back to work in the next few minutes. I wanted to talk about those programs because we've already talked about the issue that people are going to have some financial challenges. And I know you guys have a great team of folks that do work with the different programs and consulting as it relates to helping the business community get back on their feet. So share a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, we obviously hope that many businesses will be fine out of this. There's lots of programs out there from the government. There's also a lot of the banks and stuff obviously are giving deferral programs and that sort of thing. But in those cases, it's deferral programs. It's setting aside your mortgage payment for 3 months. It's not forgiving the money. You still got to pay the money back at some point in time. And in the meantime, we've had no revenue in a lot of cases because we've been mandated to shut down. So in the situation where someone is, first of all, obviously, most people will deal with their own bank and their own lending institution kind of thing to try to, if they need extra operating lines. There are some guaranteed programs and stuff like that. Again, these are all available on the federal government, for the most part, website. So if a business needs some interim financing to survive and stuff like that, there are some guaranteed loans that are available. But if the situation is worse than that, and you feel like you're drowning in the financial obligations and can't get that relief that you need from your typical bank kind of thing, we do have one of the lawyers in our office who specializes and does a lot of work in the area of restructuring and insolvency. So again, hopefully not many businesses need the advice of how to wind up the business, but if they do need some technical advice in doing that, we can assist with that as well. But before that, we do have a component of a network of sort of secondary lenders that are available that this lawyer is familiar with, kind of thing, of where to go to get sort of less conventional, not loan sharking, but less conventional financing that can possibly get a business through the hump. If they think they just need some interim financing to get through it, there's a possibility of getting some of those things as well, kind of thing. So again, if somebody feels they need that kind of advice, if they phone in, the lawyer that does that will be happy to help them with that kind of thing. So.
Well, and that's much appreciated, because you know what, I think this is what people are really, the anxiety levels are very high on the employer side, because there's this anxiety of just like, how am I going to get out into this space, and what's this space look like? And if they have these lifelines and these conversations, and maybe even just like a little bit of that safety net backup, it maybe gives them a little bit more optimism and maybe strength to keep on moving forward, because it's going to be months and months before they might see anything that would bring back a sense of kind of what we're saying is normal. So there is a question.
So I'll read this one out and tackle it if you guys have the chance to. And thanks for posting still, Conrad. We will follow it up in the group if we don't get a chance to fully answer it. I'll leave that to Deb and Stephen, though. Okay. And a quick shout out. I see my friend Landon Sovish tuned in and watching. Hey, Landon. So Conrad's question is there anything more difficult on business operation in Saskatchewan specifically compared to other provinces under this crisis? Broad question, but I'll leave it to you.
Are we having more challenges in Saskatchewan versus other provinces? We're seeing it as,
and perhaps legally as well.
I do. Well, no, and I see what you're saying, because and I won't get into it, but I know that in talking to and maybe Kirsten, you can attest to it because you're familiar with the dental world. But I know that provincially, there's differences between Alberta and Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan is met with more challenge in terms of their ability to open up. And I know that that's been a bit of a stressor. So maybe that's what the question is like, are we kind of on the benchmark of what everybody else is doing, or do we find our governments being a little bit tougher on us? I find that I heard that sometimes the associations of the professional groups are tougher on their businesses versus the government tougher on the business, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't know that it's particularly more difficult in Saskatchewan than other provinces. Every province is going to be a little bit different in their reopening plan. Certainly, as we know, Saskatchewan is ahead of a lot of other provinces as far as reopening, because our numbers have been better. But again, I don't think there's necessarily more difficult issues in Saskatchewan. So I think we're hopefully going to move forward and everyone will stay safe and get the businesses reopened. So.
Yeah, exactly. And there's finish off to that, Conrad Scott.
He said, based on the business features in Saskatchewan. So maybe the industries that we work in a lot and things like that. Again, might be broad.
You know what, Conrad? I would encourage you to make a call to Stephen, maybe, and maybe because there's more to the conversation. I hate to cut you off, but
if he wants to give me a call later, he can give me a call later. So yeah.
Okay. And we will put the number on there. So, and thank you for asking, Conrad. I appreciate it. And thank you to all you for asking questions. And I do encourage you again, because we've got a availability of a service that Stephen and the W Law Group is willing to offer us to get that extra level of just feedback and coaching to figure out what that next step looks like. They'd be more than happy to help you guys out. So thank you again, Stephen, for coming on board. I know this is a really difficult subject to be able to kind of get those black and white questions and because we're all in such varying levels as it pertains to one conversation. So got to be tricky for you folks. So you did a great job. I thank you. And thank you for staying on board to answer those questions for people that want to phone you direct as well, or maybe even to Adam and some of the others on your team. So appreciate your time. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of quick things. I do hope that you found this session insightful. There is probably going to be more questions. Please bring them on. This live session will be posted on our Facebook Live. I do want to as well, again, I always do a shout out. We've got a private best practices peer group, and it's a Facebook peer group where people come together and they just ask questions. They share in conversations. I know Stephen is part of that group. Thank you, Stephen. We've got Bridges and Leon and Kyle in there, Haley. So we've got a lot of different levels of professions and HR and business owners. So it's a safe place to sit and have some conversation. And certainly if something gets raised to the level that it's a little bit more sensitive, give us a call, give us an email, and we'll maybe even have to refer you off to the partners that we work with, depending on what the question is. So thank you for that. And what else? I think I've got everything else covered. Wow. Oh, next week's speaker, Christine Rudka. Very excited. So she is a business owner, an entrepreneur, so Pharmacy First in Saskatoon. And she also is very, very invested in the pharmaceutical world. So she's the chair of the Canadian Pharmaceutical Association. So we're going to have her on as a guest next week. I've got some really interesting questions that I'd like to ask her, what she's seeing from her end of the spectrum of this thing, because benefits and drugs has always been a conversation. So now just add COVID into this, and it'll be interesting to see what new dimensions we've gone down in this space. So do tune in. That's next Thursday at 11 o'clock, Thursday Live. Thank you very much for everybody joining in. Please stay well, stay healthy, remain optimistic. Some days it's pretty tricky, but we're all in this together, and go out for those walks this weekend. Enjoy this long weekend with your family and very close friends on a social distancing level. We do need that contact. Make it happen. That's what I want to know, is everybody made some kind of a personal social distance contact so that you can just feel like there is a world out there. So thank you again. Have a great day and a great long weekend, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen.